Welcome to DungeonCore 20. In this video, we'll walk you through our step-by-step guide for how to create a character using our system. We'll be using Foundry Virtual Tabletop to help visualize our character coming to life. We'll be using the DungeonCore20 Companion App to help guide us through the character creation process. You can find a link to our companion app in the description below. For this video, we'll be creating Victor Horizon at level 1 to help guide you through the process. Our character card maker is currently in development, but will be available soon in early 2024. Follow us to get notified when the character card maker is ready, or join our Discord for the latest news and updates and to find others looking to play. Before we begin, let's take a look at the DungeonCore20 Companion App and navigate to Players, where we can find our creation guide. The first step is to determine your character stats. To do so, each character starts with a d6 for each stat. Then, we'll choose 3 improvements. Then we can determine our health, mana, and move speed. Let's go ahead and do that. We're going to open up our Foundry and pull up the character sheet for Victor Horizon. There are 6 stats in DungeonCore20. Vitality, which represents overall life force, including health. Body, which represents physical attributes of a character. You can look at body as a combination of strength, might, endurance, fortitude, etc. Mind, which represents mental capability. This can be seen as intelligence, wisdom, perception, insight, etc. Skill, which represents a character's physical and mental finesse, and often used for weapon attacks. Arcane, which is a unique stat in DungeonCore20 in that it can be reflavored depending on the needs of an adventure or campaign. Arcane, in a typical high fantasy game, may represent magic and spellcasting, for example. In other settings, Arcane could be used as superpowers, energy, technology, unknown phenomena. It's a very flexible stat in that regard. Lastly, we have speed, which is used to represent movement and agility, including stealth, and is an important stat as it provides characters with their maximum number of move speed as well as reaction. At level 1, all characters gain 3 stat increases. So Victor, for level 1, we are going to bump up his mind to a d8, and we're going to bump up his arcane to a d10. With stat increases done, we can now determine our max health points, which is equal to your max vitality plus max body. Both of these are a d6, so we'll be doing 6 plus 6, which will be 12. Let's go ahead and set our minimum to 12 as well. And then our max mana points, which is equal to half of mind and half of arcane. So we have a mind of a d8, so that'll be 4, and an arcane of a d10, which will be 5. So our max mana points will be 9, and then we'll set up our current as well. Reactions and move speed are determined by the speed stat. Move speed is the maximum value of your speed. So with the d6, we're going to leave move speed at 6. And with the d6 for speed, our reactions is equal to half the speed stat. So we'll have 3. As characters level up, and if they improve their speed stat, they'll be able to gain additional reactions and movement. On level up, health points will be increased by vitality, and mana points will be increased by arcane. If you'd like to learn more about stats and determining stats, check out our companion app, where we include full details for what each stat does, how to allocate stats, how to determine health, mana, move speed, armor score, vigor, and so on and so forth. The next step is to determine race. Race in DungeonCore20 is very interesting as we do not have predetermined races. You as a player will be building your race, but choosing a race is a simple process. First, we'll be choosing a racial type, then we can consider racial size, and lastly, we will choose an innate affinity. When determining racial type, there are 6 races available in DungeonCore20: humans, dwarf, elf, beast, monster, and mixed race. Your racial type will determine the number of racial and character points available during character creation. The main takeaway here is that humans and dwarves have a lean towards character points, beasts and monsters have a lean towards racial points, and elves and mixed race, which is a combination of any 2 previous races, have a balanced distribution of racial and character points. We've also included some examples for how you can combine races to create new mixed races. Feel free to explore your imagination when building your character and choosing your racial type. Character size is included in the racial section as reference, but the important thing to note is that all characters in DungeonCore20 begin at medium size. If you wish to be a different size, small, large, or huge, these will be acquired as racial features in the next section. Choosing a race for Victor is going to be quite simple, as he is a human, and that is our default. And for size, we're going to leave him as medium The last step when setting up your race is to choose an innate affinity. An innate affinity is an arcane affinity, which is associated to your character. The importance of affinity will be heavily dependent on the type of game and flavor being played, but all characters will have one innate affinity that they are associated with at character creation. There are 6 arcane affinities, which are force, heat, cold, spirit, light, and dark, which can be flavored or interpreted based on the type of character you wish to build. For Victor, we have a blue icon representing cold. We're going to go ahead and check our cold. Now that we've selected our racial type and innate affinity at level 1, we're ready to move on to features. The steps for features includes spending your racial points, gaining 1 free archetype feature, and spending character points. The features section is where players will spend most of their time when creating a new character, especially if you're unfamiliar with DungeonCore20 and the wide variety of features that we've included. All features in DungeonCore20 cost 1 point, with racial features being unique in that it uses racial points rather than character points. All other feature types use character points to acquire, and some features will have feature ranks. Racial and archetype features have a max rank of 1, while all other feature types have a max rank of 9. Multiple ranks can be taken at level 1 as well. At level 1, your selection of features will be limited, but as characters progress through levels, they'll acquire a wide variety of features, which players can then decide if they would like to have selection of choices, or if they would like to have some specialization in particular features by increasing their ranks. We'll start with racial points, and with Victor, as a human, we're going to have 2 points to spend. Let's navigate over to the Features tab, filter by racial feature, and review the features that are available. As the creator of DungeonCore20, I have an unfair advantage of knowing what features exist in our system currently. If you need to further filter the different features that are available, consider looking at the filters on the top right. If you're viewing on mobile, the filters may be at the far right of the search bar. For Victor, we want him to be proficient and intelligent. So what I'm going to be looking for here is dual affinity. Dual affinity is how I'm going to get the second affinity that you saw on the character card. And for the second feature, we're going to go ahead and take Natural Arcana. Let's go ahead and add this to our character. Under the Features tab, we can see that these features have been added under the racial features. If you are not using a virtual tabletop, you can keep track of these features on a separate page and use our companion app to reference them. Now that we've added our 2 racial features, let's return to the DungeonCore20 Companion App and return to the Players tab and look at features. Before we spend character points, let's first set up our first free archetype feature. All characters may have a maximum of 3 archetype features. Where racial features were used to determine characteristics of your character's race, DungeonCore20 does not have classes. We are a classless system, and instead, the combination of archetype and other character features will help determine the type of character you are building. Archetype features are unique in that they heavily influence the style of play that defines a character. For Victor, we're going to give him, let's go with Chantless Arcana. Some features will make mention that a character is able to acquire arcane features. This is important to note if you plan on acquiring arcane features when building your character. Let's return to Victor and go ahead and add that feature. So under Features, we're going to look for Chantless Arcana. Go ahead and add that to our character as well. All right. Now that we've selected our first free archetype feature, we can spend character points. Character points are spent on character features, which represents what a character can do. Profession features, which represents what the character does during their downtime. Talent features, which represents certain abilities, proficiencies, talents that a character may have, things that they're good at outside of direct combat. And of course, arcane features, which for traditional TTRPGs may represent spellcasting and magic, but for those with the creative mind of homebrew, can represent superpowers or various forms of technology or super weapons, whatever is fitting for your adventure. For Victor, I already know I want to take Words of Inspiration. So let's go ahead and go back to our page here, open up our features once again, and we're going to choose Words of Inspiration. And I think I will take it at rank 2. So let's go ahead and bump that up. So now we have 4 points remaining. Where do we want to spend it? We can come back to our app, take a look at the other features. I think I'm going to pass on professions. Professions are something that Victor might have, but I don't think he would have it at level 1. Talent features, on the other hand, would be useful. So I think what we're going to do here is give him a point of arcane insight. And for the other one, let's go ahead and add perceptive mind. There it is. So let's go ahead and add those now. And I think we'll leave those at rank 1. As much as it would be nice to get more bonuses, we are again limited at level 1 to only 6 points as a human. So that'll do for now. It'll help us kind of round out our character. And I think for the last 2 points, I want to get some arcane features. So the world that Victor is in, magic does exist, so arcane features will likely represent some form of spell casting. But for arcane features, I'm actually going to take invoke. And for the final point, where are you? Detection. Let's do that actually. Let's go with detection and invoke. So I think those are the 2 features that we're going to take with us. We're going to grab invoke and we're going to grab detection, both at rank 1. So returning to our page here, detection, add that, and then let's also grab invoke. And now if we take a look at our current features, as a human, we've spent our 2 racial points to acquire natural arcana dual affinity. We got 1 free archetype feature, which we chose Chantless Arcana, and we spent 6 character points from being human, where we spent 2 on words of inspiration, 1 on detection, 1 on invoke, 1 on arcane insight, 1 in perceptive mind. Another nice benefit of DungeonCore20 is that character points are not required to be spent and instead can be saved for a later time. Maybe you don't know what features to take, so you choose to save them. Maybe you're waiting for a grand reveal, or maybe you simply want to save them based on the needs of a situation. But once you commit those character points, they are gone. Now that we have our features done, we can come back to the Players tab in our companion app and take a look at equipment. Choosing equipment is a simple process. Step 1, we choose 1 weapon or arcane catalyst. Step 2, we choose a weapon or armor. And step 3, we roll for starting currency, which we can spend on acquiring traveling items, consumables, etc. The dungeon manager has final say on how much currency is given at level 1, depending on the type of adventure that you are playing in. Optionally, players can choose to exchange one of these steps for an additional +1 character point during character creation. This is useful. Say you create a beast or a monster that doesn't wear armor, doesn't use weapons. Maybe you'll take the money. Who knows? Or maybe you'll take 1 weapon, but you don't want armor and you don't want currency. You can instead trade those for 2 more character points. This might be a useful option to give beasts and monsters more options, as their character points will be limited at level 1. The remaining equipment section talks about attributes, which all equipment have equipment attributes. When choosing equipment, we're going to head over to the inventory tab, and we have filters for equipment, which includes your armor types, which are simplified just as kind of the armor classification in light, medium, heavy. And we have a large variety of basic starting equipment, from melee weapons to ranged weapons to even firearms. Shields, I'll make a quick note about shields. Shields are considered melee weapons, but they also provide armor score when you're defending. More on combat and how to roll combat can be found in the Rules tab. Various items within the game are also condensed to toolkits and traps, consumables and materials, and containers. Once again, more information on equipment and inventory can be found in the Rules tab. For Victor, let's go ahead and choose his equipment. So we're going to open up the inventory tab. You can choose any armor, so it's really a matter of play style. I want to go with medium armor for Victor. So let's actually switch over to inventory, add medium armor. And I also want an arcane catalyst because otherwise I won't be able to cast my arcane features. So I'm not taking a weapon, but maybe I can roll for currency and simply buy maybe a backup dagger or something. And that concludes equipment. Quick, simple, done. Back to the companion app, let's switch over to features, players, and equipment is done. Next up, we have backstory. Backstory is something that I find is very heavily dependent on the game you're in, The importance of backstory is heavily dependent on your dungeon manager and how much they lean into characters' backstory, but it's also something that I find is more driven by the player and their expectations for how to progress a character's story by using backstory. Because Dungeon Core 20 is a very modular system in that it uses features to really define a character, backstory is less of a requirement. So backstory is optional, but we do find that backstory is important for TTRPGs, especially as it adds depth to a character, it adds intrigue, relationships. So what we've included here is 3 simple steps for creating backstory. The first one is pretty obvious. Describe your character. Second, consider motivation. So we've included some backstory considerations such as what's your origin? Where did they come from? What's their motivation? What do they want to do? What's their personality? What's their history? What's their relationships? And these are a pretty good starting point for most people to describe a character's history, where they're coming from, what motivates them, where they're going. And the last step is share your backstory. At the end of the day, TTRPGs are done at a table, and there may be certain aspects of backstory that are hidden, but a basic understanding of who your character is, I think, should be shared. Backstory is optional, so if your game doesn't require backstory, you don't have to go into depth with this. The last step here is not used for character creation, but it is important for players to be able to reference. So when a character levels up, they immediately gain a stat increase, they immediately gain their max HP and max MP increase, and they get character points which may be spent. Now that we've finished setting up stats, race, features, equipment, and built our character sheet or character reference, we are now ready to play Dungeon Core 20. We hope you found this video useful in creating your first Dungeon Core 20 character. Check our description for a link to the companion app and join our Discord where you can find the latest news and updates. If you like the direction we're taking the TTRPG hobby, consider supporting us and check out our other videos we've included in our first wave of releases, which also includes how to set up the Foundry Virtual Tabletop Alpha module for Dungeon Core 20, as well as how to navigate the Dungeon Core 20 companion app. Thank you for watching. See you next time.